The city was merciless that winter, its streets filled with hurried footsteps and umbrellas shielding strangers from the relentless drizzle. But Amelia moved more slowly than the rest, her worn sneakers soaking through with every step, her frayed backpack clutched tightly against her chest. Inside, she carried the last remnants of her life, one change of clothes, a dog-eared notebook, and the single crumpled dollar bill that felt like her only lifeline. It wasn't much, but that $1 was supposed to buy her bread or maybe a banana, something to silence the hunger gnawing at her stomach. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, and her body ached from another sleepless night at the bus station. Yet, even in the face of exhaustion and hopelessness, Amelia's eyes still carried a quiet resilience, an ember of warmth that refused to die. As she paused outside a grocery store, rain dripping from her tangled hair, a sound drew her attention, a small, raspy cough that cut through the night. Turning, she saw a boy no older than 7 huddled beneath a flickering street lamp. His thin jacket clung to his shivering frame, his lips were pale, and in his arms he clutched a ragged teddy bear. Each cough racked his tiny body, and he swayed like he might collapse at any moment. Amelia's heart clenched. She hurried to him, crouching so her eyes met his. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, "are you okay?" The boy shook his head, his breathing shallow. "My chest, it hurts," he whispered. His eyes brimmed with fever, glassy and unfocused. Amelia glanced around. Dozens of people walked past, some giving the boy a fleeting glance but quickly turning away, as though compassion might cost them too much time. No one stopped. No one cared. Her hand instinctively slipped into her pocket, closing around the dollar. That single coin was her last safety net, but looking at the boy's frail body, she knew her choice was already made. "Come with me," she said gently, taking his cold little hand. Inside the grocery store, she spent her last dollar on a bottle of water and a roll of bread. Kneeling beside him in the entrance, she tore the bread into pieces. "Eat slowly," she instructed, offering him water. The boy's eyes widened. "But, don't you need this?" Amelia forced a small smile, though her empty stomach twisted in protest. "I'll be fine. You need it more." He clutched the bread like it was treasure and ate hungrily, drinking between bites. She stayed close, rubbing his back when he coughed. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Ethan," he whispered. "Hi, Ethan, I'm Amelia." She smoothed damp hair from his forehead. "Where are your parents?" Ethan hesitated. "Daddy was supposed to come back, but I got lost. I don't know where he is." Her chest tightened. This child wasn't just sick, he was lost, alone, and terrified. Amelia glanced out at the rain. "Don't worry," she promised. "I'll help you find him." For hours, Amelia led Ethan through the streets, stopping strangers, asking if anyone had seen a frantic parent searching for a boy. The night deepened, the rain falling harder, but she didn't let go of his hand. Her shoes squelched with every step, her stomach ached, and exhaustion pressed heavily on her shoulders, yet none of it mattered. Ethan needed her. Finally, near midnight, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, his dark hair dampened by the rain. His eyes, sharp, commanding, and weary, scanned the street until they landed on the small figure clutching Amelia's hand. "Ethan," he shouted, his voice breaking. "Daddy," Ethan cried, running into his arms. Amelia froze, breath catching. This man, with his expensive suit and piercing gaze, was clearly Ethan's father. Relief softened his face as he clutched his son tightly, but when his eyes shifted to Amelia, his expression hardened into something guarded, almost accusing. "Where did you find him?" His tone was clipped, defensive. Amelia swallowed, suddenly aware of her soaked clothes and shabby appearance. "He was alone," she said softly. "Sick. I just helped him." The man's jaw tightened. "You should be careful. Not everyone would believe your intentions." His words stung, though she tried not to let it show. Before she could respond, Ethan tugged his father's sleeve, coughing into his shoulder. "Daddy, don't be mad. She gave me food. She's nice." The man's expression faltered, a flicker of guilt passing through his eyes. He looked at Amelia again, this time with something unreadable, curiosity, perhaps, or unease. But he said nothing more, ushering Ethan into the car before driving away. Amelia stood in the rain, her hands empty, her stomach hollow. She had nothing left, not even a single dollar. Yet she whispered to herself, "At least he's safe." That was enough. What she didn't know was that Ethan's father was Nicholas Hawthorne, CEO of one of the city's largest corporations, a man whose wealth could move mountains but who lived in a prison of loneliness. And though he had left that night without a word of thanks, the image of the girl in the rain refused to leave his mind. Nicholas didn't sleep. He paced his penthouse, staring out at the skyline, haunted by the memory of her face. Amelia. She had looked fragile, her clothes threadbare, but she had given everything she had for a child who wasn't hers. Ethan, still weak from fever, had fallen asleep murmuring, "Daddy," she was like an angel. An angel. Nicholas almost scoffed at the word. He had spent years surrounded by people who smiled at him only because of his fortune. Investors, board members, socialites, they all wanted something. But that girl had wanted nothing. She had handed his son bread with a smile that asked for no reward. The following morning, he took Ethan to the hospital, arranging the best care money could buy. But as he sat by his son's bedside, Nicholas's thoughts kept circling back to her. Who was she? Where had she gone? Fate answered his question days later. Leaving the hospital with Ethan, Nicholas spotted her on a bench across the street. Amelia sat quietly, her backpack by her side, a battered notebook open on her knees. She was sketching, brow furrowed in concentration. Her hair was messy, her clothes still damp from the drizzle, but there was an undeniable grace in the way she held her pencil. Without thinking, Nicholas approached. "You." Amelia looked up, startled. "Oh, it's you." She quickly shut her notebook, embarrassed. He studied her closely this time, the hollowness in her cheeks, the tremor in her hands, the quiet dignity she carried despite her hardship. "I owe you," he said simply. She shook her head. "No, you don't owe me anything. Your son is safe. That's enough." Her sincerity unsettled him. No one in his world ever said, "Enough." They always wanted more. "Ethan hasn't stopped talking about you," Nicholas admitted. "He says you saved him." Amelia smiled faintly. "He just needed someone to notice." Her words landed heavily. Nicholas had all the wealth in the world, yet somehow his own son had been lonely enough to wander off unnoticed. "Come with us," Nicholas said abruptly. "Lunch. At least allow me that." She hesitated, but Ethan's hopeful eyes convinced her. "Please," he begged, "I want you to come." And so, Amelia found herself sitting across from them in a quiet restaurant, sipping soup that warmed her for the first time in days. She felt out of place amid the polished silverware and soft lighting, but Nicholas surprised her. He asked about her life, her sketches, her dreams. He listened, not politely, but genuinely, as though her words mattered. "I used to want to study art," Amelia confessed, eyes lowering. "But life had other plans." Nicholas leaned back, thoughtful. "What if life is giving you another chance?" She looked up, startled by the intensity in his gaze. For a moment, she saw past the cold exterior of the CEO and glimpsed the loneliness he carried like armor. Weeks passed. Nicholas found excuses to see her again, sometimes under the guise of gratitude, sometimes because Ethan begged for it. Slowly, the three of them formed an unlikely bond. Amelia's laughter echoed through Nicholas's mansion, filling rooms that had long felt hollow. She taught Ethan how to draw, stayed by his side as his health improved, and unknowingly began healing Nicholas's heart as well. One evening, as Amelia prepared to leave, Nicholas stopped her at the door. "You gave away your last dollar to my son," he said quietly. "Why?" Amelia hesitated before answering. "Because, no one should feel alone when they're hurting. I know what that feels like." Something inside him cracked. For so long, Nicholas had been surrounded by people yet utterly alone. And here stood a girl who had nothing, yet gave everything without hesitation. His voice was raw when he spoke. "Stay. Not because I owe you, not because you need help, but because I don't want to be lonely anymore." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a burden, not as a charity case, but as someone who mattered. She nodded, and Nicholas smiled, pulling her into the warmth of his home and his heart. The poor girl who gave away her last dollar never expected to change the life of a lonely CEO. Yet through a single act of kindness, she found not only a family but also the truth that sometimes the smallest gestures rewrite the grandest destinies. The rain poured in relentless sheets, turning the city sidewalks into mirrors of gray light. Amelia sat on the curb outside a grocery store, hugging her knees against the cold. Her sneakers were soaked through, her jeans clung uncomfortably, and her backpack, her only possession, was heavier than it looked. Inside were a few changes of clothes, a notebook filled with sketches, and a single crumpled dollar bill she had been saving all day. That dollar was her safety net. Bread, maybe fruit, something small to keep her going for another 24 hours. Hunger had become an old companion, the kind that gnawed at her belly but never fully silenced her spirit. Still, she clung to it stubbornly, whispering to herself, one more day. Just one more day. As she debated stepping into the store, a soft, ragged cough cut through the rain. Looking up, she saw a boy sitting beneath a flickering street lamp. No older than 7, he was curled up on the wet concrete, a shabby teddy bear in his arms. His face was pale, his lips blue, and every cough rattled his fragile chest. Amelia's heart clenched. She rose quickly, forgetting her hunger, and crouched in front of him. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" The boy shook his head, his eyes glossy with fever. "It hurts, here," he whispered, pressing a hand to his ribs. People streamed past without stopping, umbrellas tilted away as though compassion might be contagious. Amelia glanced at the single dollar in her pocket. She hesitated only a moment before pulling the boy to his feet. "Come with me," she said gently, guiding him into the grocery store. With trembling fingers, she exchanged her last bill for a bottle of water and a roll of bread. She tore the bread into small pieces and handed it to him. "Eat slowly," she instructed. The boy blinked up at her. "But, don't you need this?" Amelia forced a smile. "I'll be okay. You need it more." He devoured the bread, sipping water between bites. When he finished, he clutched the teddy bear to his chest and whispered, "Thank you." "What's your name?" Amelia asked softly. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan," she repeated with a smile. "I'm Amelia. Where are your parents?" Ethan's eyes welled with tears. "Daddy was supposed to come back, but I got lost. I don't know where he is." Her chest tightened. This boy wasn't just sick, he was lost. She squeezed his hand. "Don't worry, Ethan, I'll help you find him." They wandered the city for hours, asking strangers, searching the streets. Amelia ignored her hunger and exhaustion, focusing only on the small hand gripping hers. At last, near midnight, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. A tall man in a tailored suit leapt out, his sharp eyes scanning the street until they landed on the boy. "Ethan, Daddy," Ethan cried, breaking free of Amelia and running into his father's arms. Amelia froze. The man's relief was palpable, his shoulders relaxing as he clutched his son. But when he turned his gaze on Amelia, his expression shifted, cold, guarded. "Where did you find him?" His voice was clipped, his tone accusing. Amelia straightened, suddenly self-conscious in her soaked clothes. "He was alone, sick. I just helped him." The man's jaw tightened. "You should be careful. Not everyone would believe your intentions." The words stung, but before Amelia could respond, Ethan tugged at his father's coat, coughing. "Daddy, she's nice. She gave me food." The man's stern gaze flickered with something softer, guilt, perhaps, but he said nothing more. He ushered Ethan into the car, sparing Amelia one last unreadable look before driving away. Amelia stood in the rain, her pockets empty, her body weak, but her heart strangely at peace. She whispered to herself, "At least he's safe." She didn't know she had just crossed paths with Nicholas Hawthorne, one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. And though he had left without a word of gratitude, he would not forget the girl who gave her last dollar to save his son. Part 2, The Lonely CEO. Nicholas Hawthorne was not accustomed to sleepless nights. His schedule was meticulously ordered, meetings, contracts, dinners with investors. But that night, he found himself pacing the glass-walled penthouse of his skyscraper home, haunted by the image of a young woman with sad eyes and a soft smile. Amelia. Ethan had fallen asleep quickly, still weak from fever, but not before whispering, "Daddy." She was like an angel. Nicholas frowned at the word. An angel? No, just a ragged girl from the street. And yet, she had given her last coin to a stranger's child without hesitation. In his world, where even family saw him as a wallet, such purity was almost incomprehensible. The next morning, he arranged the best doctors for Ethan. Still, his thoughts returned to her soaked clothes, her trembling hands, the way she had looked at his son like he was precious. He had seen pity before, but never love from a stranger. Days later, fate intervened. Leaving the hospital with Ethan, Nicholas spotted her again. She was on a bench across the street, sketching in a battered notebook, her backpack by her side. Her hair was messy, her clothes worn, but there was a grace in the way she focused, pencil moving swiftly across the page. Nicholas crossed the street. "You." Amelia looked up, startled. "Oh, it's you." He studied her more closely this time. She was thinner than he remembered, her cheeks hollow, but her eyes still carried that ember of light. "I owe you," he said bluntly. Amelia shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Your son is safe. That's all that matters." Her sincerity unsettled him. Nobody in his world ever said that. "Ethan hasn't stopped talking about you," Nicholas admitted reluctantly. "He says you saved him." Amelia smiled faintly. "He just needed someone to notice." The word struck him harder than he expected. His wealth had built towers and bought empires, yet he had somehow failed to notice the loneliness in his own son's eyes. "Have lunch with us," Nicholas said suddenly. "At least let me thank you properly." Amelia hesitated, but Ethan's hopeful eyes convinced her. "Please," he said softly. "I want you to come." And so Amelia found herself at a quiet restaurant, sipping warm soup, feeling both out of place and oddly comfortable. Nicholas surprised her. He asked about her drawings, her dreams, her struggles. He listened, not politely, but genuinely. "I used to want to study art," Amelia admitted, tracing the rim of her glass. "But life had other plans." Nicholas leaned back, studying her. "What if life is offering you another chance?" She met his gaze, startled by the sincerity in his tone. Behind his polished exterior, she saw something raw, loneliness, maybe even longing. In the weeks that followed, Nicholas found reasons to see her again. Sometimes under the guise of gratitude, sometimes because Ethan begged for it. Slowly, an unlikely bond formed. Amelia's laughter filled the mansion's empty halls, her sketches decorated Ethan's bedside, and her presence softened Nicholas's hard edges. One evening, as she prepared to leave, Nicholas stopped her at the door. His voice was low, almost vulnerable. "You gave your last dollar to my son," he said. "Why?" Amelia hesitated, then answered simply, "Because no one should feel alone when they're hurting." "I know what that feels like." Nicholas's throat tightened. For years, he had lived surrounded by wealth yet suffocated by loneliness. And here stood a girl with nothing, yet she gave everything without hesitation. He took a step closer. "Stay, not because I owe you. Not because you need help. But because I don't want to be lonely anymore." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a burden, not as a charity case, but as someone who mattered. She nodded, and Nicholas smiled, pulling her into the warmth of his home and his heart. The poor girl who gave away her last dollar never imagined she would change the life of a lonely CEO. Yet through her kindness, she found not only a family but proof that sometimes the smallest gestures rewrite the grandest destinies.